5 says, who changed the truth of Elohim into a lie and worship and serve the creature more than the creator, who is blessed forever.
Okay.
Right? So what do you mean? Who changed the truth of the Most High into a lie? Everything you thought was in the Bible, some years of serious consideration has now shown you that it's not even in the Bible.
This is about the way that I walk. You got an issue about the way that I talk.
I'ma give it to you.
For the brothers outlined in the chalk, Semiramis chilling out in the park.
I'ma give it to you.
And they don't know the way that I feel. On the mission now to tell you what's real.
I'ma give it to you.
While you're looking for a proper appeal, you want the gospel just to cop you a feel.
I'm not dealing with you.
I'm hitting on this track like it's magical. Place it with the classical, or make it international. You want the sympathetic, and I'm a little drastic though. Focus on my past, I'ma give you what you asking for. Save it for the fashion show. Talking about your church service, I ain't here to talk to you. Where the hell your pastor go? Lying through his teeth, preaching like he swear to God. Misleading people, now they act like they ain't scared of God. People looking for change, but choose to walk ahead of y'all. Make a tight beat, tell the truth in the song, and they head a nod. No change, no option of dodging flames. Dreams of copping the range, sneakers, outfits, and chains. Nigga prophets explain why demon prophets remain. One ticket to hell, my niggas hopping the train. Y'all got a name to put the top prophets to shame. His name and his fame is stopping the pain. This is about the way that I walk. You got an issue about the way that I talk.
I'ma give it to you.
For the brothers outlined in the chalk, Semiramis chilling out in the park.
I'ma give it to you.
And they don't know the way that I feel. On the mission now to tell you what's real.
I'ma give it to you.
While you're looking for a proper appeal, you want the gospel just to cop you a feel.
I'm not dealing with you.
Didn't want to read it, receiving it from the Catholics. Mine couldn't conceive it, believing it from the Baptists. The Hebrews wasn't white, so they running all out of actors. Searching through the chapters and seeing they got it backwards. Kindly tell the truth, and the rage in them only escalated. Every word they hated, but none want to debate it. So what I'm supposed to do, let them fake it until they make it. Nah, bowing to the idols, my powers vowing to take them down. Now believers smoking while Christians drinking the potion. Everybody's high on that lie when the demon spoke it. Alive on arrival with bruise, we all awoke with. Vision kinda blurry, he's realigning the focus. Gotta tell the truth, if it fills the room or it clears it out. Peers don't wanna hear, so I'm filled with a lot of fears and doubts. You gave me the heart, so it's time to put the action in. Praises that I give you on earth will only be practicing. This is about the way that I walk. You got an issue about the way that I talk.
I'ma give it to you.
For the brothers outlined in the chalk, Semiramis chilling out in the park.
I'ma give it to you.
And they don't know the way that I feel. On the mission now to tell you what's real.
I'ma give it to you.
While you're looking for a proper appeal, you want the gospel just to cop you a feel.
I'm not dealing with you. All right, mic check. 1 2 1 2. Hopefully I'm not too loud or too quiet, but if my mic is good, someone please put a 1 in the comments. My sound is okay and my video is okay. Someone please put a 1 in the comments, and we'll proceed from there. All right. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Brother Chick says we're good in YouTube land, hopefully, because I did a playback before and my mic was too loud. And then another time it was too quiet. I just want to make sure that the balance is good. All right. Shabbat shalom. Brother Emmanuel Bronson says we're good. All right. Shabbat shalom. Akira says we're good in YouTube land. Quam 12. Shabbat shalom. Aqua says that we're good in YouTube land. All right. But during the broadcast, chat, if you don't mind, let me know if my mic is, if it ever gets too loud or if I'm speaking too quiet. Let me know. I do like to play a little background music as I teach, and then hopefully it doesn't come in and drown me out, because I can't hear it myself. I'm thinking probably in the future I'll wear some headphones while I do this. That'll help me manage it a little better. But for now, I just need y'all to look out for me. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're talking about from Babylon to the pulpit. From Babylon to the Pulpit. Exposing the pagan roots of modern Christianity. All right, so for centuries, millions have worshipped from pews, um, believing they were honoring the Most High, all while unknowingly following traditions rooted in ancient Babylon, right? And that's important to know because when we get into Revelations 18:4, and it talks about come out of her, my people, or when we get into Revelation 17, when he talks about Babylon has fallen, we need to understand which Babylon it's talking about. All right, so let me start over. For centuries, millions have worshipped from pews, believing they were honoring the Most High, all while unknowingly following traditions rooted in ancient Babylon. From Christmas trees to Sunday worship, the fingerprints of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz still mark the practices of modern Christianity. But how did this happen? How did the faith once delivered to the set-apart people of the Most High Yah become intertwined with pagan sun worship and imperial decrees? Right. So in this Bible study, we will expose the historical and spiritual journey from Babylon to the pulpit, tracing how replacement theology, church councils, and religious syncretism gave rise to a version of Christianity that abandoned the Torah in favor of tradition. Using documented history and a wealth of scriptures from the old, renewed, and apocryphal writings, all right, will shine light on the deception and call Yah's chosen people to return to the ancient paths of righteousness, all right, the Torah of the Most High Yahawah. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the reading. We're going to be coming from Psalms 147. Okay, we're going to read that in its entirety, and then we'll proceed to the Bible study lesson. And I don't know, I'm going to keep my eyes on a swivel on the clock because I don't know if I'm going to have time to go through the whole presentation. This might be a two-part series, but we'll navigate it. We'll see. We'll keep our eyes on the time. All right, so let's get it. Starting in the first verse, it says, "Praise Yah, for it is good to sing praises to our Elohim, for it is pleasant. Praise is fitting. Yahawah builds up Jerusalem. He gathers the outcasts of Israel. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up the wounds. He appoints the number of the stars. He gives names to them all. Great is our master and mighty in power. There is no limit to his understanding. Yahawah lifts up the meek ones. He throws the wrong ones down to the ground. Respond to Yahawah with thanksgiving. Sing praises on the lyre to our Elohim, who covers the heavens with clouds, who praises rain from the earth, or prepares rain for the earth, who makes grass to sprout on the mountains, giving to the beasts his food, to the young ravens that cry. He does not delight in the strength of horses. He takes no pleasures in the legs of a man. Yahawah takes pleasure in those who fear him, and those who wait for his loving commitment. Extol Yahawah, O Jerusalem. Praise your Elohim, O Zion, for he has strengthened the bars of your gates. He has blessed your children in your midst, who make peace in your borders. He satisfies you with the finest wheat, who sends out his command to the earth. His word runs very speedily, who gives snow like wool. He scatters the frost like ashes, throwing out his hail like pieces. Who dares stand before his cold? He sends out his word and melts them. He causes his wind to blow, the waters flow, declaring his word to Jacob, his laws and his right rulings to Israel. He has not done so with any nation, and they have not known his right rulings. Praise Yah. Right? So it's like the Most High's word is most certainly blessed. Let's go ahead and get into the PowerPoint. Right. Let's get into it. From Babylon to the pulpit. A lot of people, I had a sister tell me the other day that, since I was once a minister in the church and now, I went away from Sunday church, that I'm no longer saved. Right. I didn't want to get into it with her about, salvation and what the scriptures really teach, so on and so forth. But at the same time, it goes to that old adage that we say almost every Shabbat. Everything that we grew up in the church learning, it was through tradition. It was not through the scriptures. All right. A change happened, right? In time, once upon a time, as they say, a change took place. where the things of the Most High were distorted by a nation whom he did not give his word to, right? So that's why we read in Psalms 147, verses 19 and 20. He declared his word to Jacob, his laws and his judgments to Israel. He has not done so with any nation, right? So when the nation of Rome, all right, and Greece got introduced to the Most High's word, what they did was they took authority over something that was never given to them, right? And then after centuries of remixing and rebranding and rehashing, we have what we call modern Christianity. There's no salvation in modern Christianity. There is nothing holy about that ghost y'all got in modern Christianity. But we're going to deal with it, right? We're going to deal with it. I'm going to try not to use my mouse as much. My mouse is dying, but it is what it is. Modern Christianity did not develop in a vacuum, right? From the early, and a lot of people believe that, you know, the apostles, after Christ ascended back to the Father, that the apostles carried on the traditions of church today, as we see it today. No, they did not, right? The people in the Bible knew the biblical definition of sin, right? Modern Christians today do not, right? So when the Most High says, or when Christ tells the woman who was caught in adultery, go and sin no more, he told her in a nutshell to go keep the laws of the Most High, right? Just that simple. But modern Christianity, it did not develop in a vacuum. From the early centuries after Messiah, elements of ancient pagan worship seeped into Christian doctrine and practices, right? Many scholars and theologians have noted how certain traditions in Christianity can be traced back to Babylonian religion of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz, right? This is what's known as syncretism, right? Syncretism is the blending of belief systems, right? Whenever you blend a belief system, all right, this is what, you know what I'm saying, what you have. That's why it's important that they keep the names away from you, because you don't know who you're worshiping, right? That's intentional, right? And it goes along with also replacement theology. And replacement theology is the idea that the church supplanted Israel and the Torah. Okay, that's what happened when these people who the Bible was never given to, all right, came and tried to take authority over it, right? So over time, key figures and events such as Marcion, we'll deal with Marcion in the 2nd century. We'll deal with the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. Medieval theologians like Thomas Aquinas, or even the 19th century teachers like John Nelson Darby. All right, they helped to shape Christianity that often diverged from its original Hebraic roots. Okay, and we tell people often that you can't understand the scriptures unless you look at it through a Hebraic lens, and they don't know what we mean by that, right? They're looking at it through a distorted lens that these individuals, all right, went and changed it. So in this Bible study, of course, we'll expose and explore historical and theological evidence of how practices like pagan sun worship were integrated into early Christianity, how these influences manifest in Catholicism, right? The Protestant Reformation, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, and other groups, all right? We will also examine the warnings in scripture about the Nicolaitans, the Gnostic influences, so on and so forth, when we get into Revelations. And ultimately, we're going to issue a call for the chosen people of the Most High to come out of Babylon, right? Come out of Babylonian customs and return to keeping the Torah of Elohim as the true path of faith, right? The scriptures tells us to return to the old paths, to seek the old paths, the old ways, right? So, ancient Babylonian religion, Christian parallels, right? We're going to take our time with this one. The origin of much pagan religion is often traced back to ancient Babylon, right? Shortly after the flood, okay? The Bible, it introduces a notorious figure named Nimrod, grandson of Noah, as the first powerful king and founder of Babel, right? Is where it says Cush brought forth Nimrod. He was a mighty hunter before Yahawah, and the beginning of his reign was Babel. So according to both scripture and historical tradition, Nimrod stood in rebellion against Elohim, right? The Jewish historian Josephus wrote that Nimrod excited people to affront and contempt Elohim, right? And basically telling them that they could worship, you know, in their own fashion. They don't need the God you know what I'm saying, the creator, so on and so forth. So persuading them that their own courage, all right, is what was going to procure them happiness. This was his influence, all right, and it went on from there. So in other words, Nimrod became a sort of prototype of an antichrist figure, right, leading people into idolatry and self-exaltation, right. And a lot of people don't realize that that's all it's about. It's about you. That's why you heap to yourselves teachers having itching ears. You want somebody to tell you what you want to hear because it's all about you. Okay. It's the same Babylonian beast system. Okay. The origin of Salakia. I think I already said that. All right. I don't know what's going on here. I have to refresh my page. Give me a second. My internet is up. Are we still live? Yeah, we're still good. For some reason, my internet is dropping. Hold on. Give me a second. I got to readjust because this is not doing what I needed to do. Yeah, my PowerPoint dropped for some reason. So, you know what I'm saying? It might just turn into we have to do a part 2 because I know I have a lot of slides to get through. A lot of slides, a lot of talking points. But, all right. Let's see where we was at. All right. So let me get us back. Let me get us back to where we was at. Share screen real quick. All right, we're back. That wasn't too bad. That wasn't too bad. All right. Hold on. All right, are we good? All right, we're good now. All right. So let's get us up to speed. Let's deal with Semiramis real quick. All right. Semiramis, the mother and wife of Nimrod / Baal, right? Mother and wife. How can she be both? Right? She was called Ishtar, pronounced Easter, Astarte in English, all right? Astaroth and Isis, right? Many forms of the same religion, all right? And then, you know, since she became Mary in the Catholic Church, same figure, same different names, right? Semiramis is identified in later traditions as Nimrod's wife and in some legends his mother. While not named in the Bible, she is central in Babylonian lore as a queen who, after Nimrod's death, deified him as the sun god and later bore a son named Tammuz, claiming that he was Nimrod's reborn son, right? So in other words, after Nimrod died, she supposedly conceived, right, miraculously from the sun, all right, which was Nimrod, right, and bore Tammuz. So Tammuz thus was presented as a miraculous child, a false messiah of that age. The cult of mother goddess and child was born, Semiramis revered as queen of heaven, and the baby Tammuz venerated as a god. Right? The Bible gives a glimpse of this cult in the book of Ezekiel, where the prophet in a vision, all right, sees women weeping for Tammuz. Right? I think that was Ezekiel 8. Right? There was at the temple weeping for Tammuz. All right, and the Most High calls that a great abomination. Right. So we're dealing with syncretism. All right. Because the enemy is crafty. Satan is crafty. Right. He has you worshiping these false gods, just calling them different names, and has you believing that these are somehow described in the Bible or backed up by scripture. Right. That's why it's important to understand scripture. All right. Through a biblical Hebraic lens and not through tradition. Right. You believe it in tradition, you get caught up in these sun religions. All right. So Tammuz's annual death and alleged resurrection were mourned for 40 days each year in Babylon, right? This is how you get Lent in that whole situation. This 40-day mourning for Tammuz followed by a jubilant celebration of his return, is strikingly similar to the later Christian practice called Lent, all right, where they do 40 days of fasting before celebrating the risen Christ. Eerily similar, right? It is no coincidence, as historians have noted, for 40 days abstinence of Lent and was directly borrowed from the worshippers of the Babylonian goddess, right? So an indispensable preliminary to the festival of commemoration of death and resurrection of Tammuz, right? That's basically what we want to get at. Okay. Ancient Babylonian religion and Christian parallels, right? Sun worship was another core feature of Babylonian religion instituted by Nimrod. By identifying Nimrod with the sun, Semiramis encouraged the people to worship the sun as the giver of life, right? Many pagan cults or cultures inherited this, from Egypt's Ra to Persia's Mithra to Rome's Sol Invictus, all right? The winter solstice around December 25th was celebrated as the rebirth of the sun, when the days start to lengthen again. Tammuz, all right, as Nimrod reincarnation, was said to be born at that time, symbolizing the newborn sun. All right. So as part of Babylonian celebrations, the evergreen tree sprouting from a dead stump, said to represent Tammuz rising from the dead, it was decorated with silver and gold, and gifts were exchanged on December 25th to honor the newborn sun. Right. Thousands of years later, the Roman Empire celebrated winter solstice with Saturnalia. All right. And dies Natalis or Sol Invictus. All right. So what that was the birthday of the unconquered sun. Right. On December the 25th. Right. That date, long before it was assigned to Jesus' birth, was already a pagan holy day honoring a false sun god, Tammuz, or his equivalent. Right. Mithras, Horus. Okay. And that's why they say that Christianity is pagan, is plagiarizing Egypt. All right. It is what it is. So over time, Christianity spread through the Gentile world. Many of these ancient customs were rebranded with Christian names, creating remarkable parallels. Right. So one, you have the pagan practices versus the Christian adaptations. Right. One would be worship of the sun as the supreme deity. All right. Holy Sunday for honor. All right. So the Christian adaptation was observance of Sunday as the primary day of Christian worship instead of the biblical Sabbath. Right. So then on the other side, you had the winter solstice festival. All right. The birth of Tammuz on December the 25th, celebrated with evergreen trees, decorations, gift giving. All right. And then the Christian adaptation celebration of Christmas on December 25th as the birth of Christ, complete with Christmas trees, ornaments, and exchanging gifts. Notably, the Bible does not give Jesus' birth, and early Christians did not celebrate Christmas. Okay. So then the other one would be the 40 days of Lent. All right. Or the 40 days mourning of the death of Tammuz each spring, often with fasting. And then you have Lent, 40-day period of penance and fasting leading up to Easter, introduced later in centuries by the Roman Catholic Church. Okay. All right. Ancient pagan practices. You had Easter. All right. Festival of Ishtar, Astarte. All right. The fertility goddess, celebrating Tammuz's resurrection with rabbits and eggs, symbols of fertility. Right. So later Christian adaptation, Easter, when they got away from trying to do Passover, just like the Hebrews were, and they wanted their own day, they came up with Easter. All right. And this is the Christian celebration of Jesus' resurrection, but named Easter in English after the old spring goddess Astarte. Right. Even if you say Easter, you're still saying Ishtar. You're just saying it in English. Right. It is what it is. And it still features eggs, rabbits, sunrise service, etc., none of which are biblical. Early believers marked Pesach or Passover, the scriptural observance of the Messiah's death and resurrection, without those pagan trappings. Right. So back over to the pagan practice, mother goddess and divine sun worship. All right. Semiramis and Tammuz, or Isis and Horus, same difference, different names. All right. Images of the mother with child with arms exalted, right? And then the Christian later adaptation was the veneration of Mary and the Christ child, all right? Mary titled Queen of Heaven, all right, an ancient pagan title, all right, according to Jeremiah 7:18, all right, and ubiquitous Christian art icons show Mary with the baby Jesus in a pose identical to the pagan mother-child images, right? Though Jesus' birth is real and it's set apart, and exaltation of Mary to near goddess status has no biblical basis and parallels in pagan mother worship. Okay, it's a problem. So let's get to the symbol, the cross, the symbol of the cross, ancient pagan practice, right? It was a sacred sign, the T, all right, for Tammuz, to represent Tammuz, right? So in later Christian adaptations, the cross as a universal symbol of Christianity, while the cross symbolizes Christ's crucifixion, the widespread use of the shape as an object of veneration worn on the body made into idols mirrors earlier pagan symbolisms. Early Christians focused on the message of the cross, not the icon itself, right? So we have the obelisk, right? And the pagan practices, ancient pagan practices. You have obelisks, sun wheels, and other solar symbols erected in worship of sun deities, right? And later Christian adaptations, you had church architecture and symbols incorporating obelisks, sunbursts, all right? When you look at the Vatican St. Peter's Square, it features ancient Egyptian obelisk at the center, all right? And an 8-rayed sundial or sun wheel, right? Designed in its plaza, all right? It's not a coincidence, right? Look at this picture. On the left, you have the Roman Catholic statue of Mary, right? With baby Jesus. In the center, you have the Egyptian statue of Isis nursing her baby Horus. On the right, you have the Roman statue of pagan mother goddess Mater Matutu, Salaki. All right. It's not a coincidence, or it shouldn't be. All right. So from the comparison, it's evident that many cherished Christian customs originated outside of Scripture, right? As historian Alexander Hislop observed over a century ago, the church at Rome often took measures to get the Christian and pagan festivals amalgamated, right? So that pagans converted to Christianity and could keep their old practices under new names, right? So this strategy of making converts comfortable, effectively a compromise with idolatry, had profound consequences. By blending the worship of Yahawah with the symbols of Nimrod and Babylon, all right, the church gradually obscured the pure faith, all right, that was delivered to the saints, right? They obscured it. That's why they say this doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, right? So let's deal with early syncretism in the church, all right? Dealing with the Nicolaitans, because the Most High said in Revelations that he hates the teachings of the Nicolaitans, right? So syncretism began to infiltrate the assembly of believers even in the New Testament times, right? The book of Revelation preserves the Messiah's rebuke of two early heretical influences. One was the Nicolaitans and what was some called proto-Gnosticism. The church at Ephesus, Christ says, "Yet this you have, that you hate the works of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate." So these Nicolaitans are again mentioned in what is that? Gagum. Hope I said that right. Where he says, "So you also have those who adhere to the teaching of the Nicolaitans, which teachings I hate." Right. So Christ Yahawah is acknowledging the fact that the teaching of the Nicolaitans, he hated it, right? But who were they? Who were the Nicolaitans, right? From Nicolaitans to Nicaea, who were they? Early church Christian writers suggest that the Nicolaitian sect taught moral laxity and idolatrous compromise, perhaps encouraging believers to mix in pagan feasts and sexual immorality under the guise of freedom. In the same passage, Christ links them to those who hold the teachings of Balaam, right? Who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat food offered to idols, and to commit whoring, right? So in short, the Nicolaitans in the first century church were pushing a form of syncretism, telling believers it was acceptable to partake in pagan practices as far as idol feasts and so on and so forth. All right. And to discard the commandments, right? Yahawah, Christ Yahawah emphatically hated this doctrine because it was a betrayal of the faith's purity. Okay. That's why people don't really understand what's wrong with this Roman Catholic Church doctrine, right? It distorts, it betrays the scripture's purity, right? Notably, the term Nicolaitans literally means conquerors of the people, right? The name Nicolaitan means conquerors of the people. Some interpret this as an early church hint or an early hint of the heretical clergy dominating the laity, right? There was here a straight up heresy, but they were dominating the people who were trying to adhere to the scriptures, right? That was another form of corruption in the church, right? Whether by false teaching or abusive hierarchy, the Nicolaitans' error was, doing damage to, those who believed in the Messiah, right? Same way the Roman Catholic doctrine does damage to those who claim to believe in the Messiah. So, at that same time as the Nicolaitans, in the other church, you had Gnosticism or the Gnostics, all right? And Gnostics means knowledge, right? And that was a movement that blended Greek philosophy with spiritual concepts, claiming secret knowledge, right? Sort of like how you have the Masons today, and things of that nature, right? And my bad, y'all. I'm supposed to have my comments over here. Shabbat shalom, brother Donnan. Good to see you out. All right. So at the same time, Gnostic ideas were rising. All right. Many Gnostics rejected the God of the Old Testament and the physical world as evil. They called the physical world evil. The Apostle John, he seems to target these ideas when he warns that many deceivers do not confess that Jesus came in the flesh, right? And those people were Gnostic teachers. They denied Christ's true humanity, right? So, and when we get into Revelations, the church of Thyatira, all right, is chastised for tolerating a false prophetess named Jezebel, right? Who led believers into idolatry and immorality, right? She and her followers prided themselves on knowing the deep secrets of Satan, right? Likely sarcastic reference to heretical mystic teachings, so on and so forth. Thus, the mystery religion aspect of Babylon, secret knowledge, twisting of the Most High's truth, reappeared in the early church via Gnostic cults. Okay, these were the first attempts to replace the apostolic gospel with a counterfeit, and they set the stage for further deviation, right? That's how the stage was set. Then we move right on into modern Christianity and how we got here, right? Modern Christianity and how we got here. If y'all don't mind, can y'all please put a like and share on the video? Appreciate it. So we can move the algorithm a little bit, right? All right. So modern Christianity, we already said that it didn't develop in a vacuum, right? It didn't develop in a vacuum. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was not the teaching of the apostles, so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying? It was something that was later adopted and transformed because, as we said before, Constantine wanted to. So this is how the story goes. But he wanted to make it easy for the Gentiles to be converted into Christians, right? And still keep their practice. So they just took what they were already practicing and put Christian names on them, right? That's all that was, right? So after time, it's you're dealing with syncretism, the blending of belief systems. All right. It was introduced as they started to introduce replacement theology, where the Most High's chosen people no longer mattered. The Most High's Torah no longer mattered. The church was the new chosen people, you know what I'm saying, and things of that nature. None of that which is in the scriptures. So let's look at Marcion and the rise of replacement theology. Marcion and the rise of replacement theology. By the 2nd century, as Gentile membership in the church had far outnumbered the Jewish believers, theology of severing Christianity from its Hebrew roots took a hold, right? They all used to practice honoring the Sabbath. They all used to practice the dietary laws. They all used to practice the feast days and things of that nature. But then one day they decided they wanted to sever Christianity from its Hebraic roots. All right. No one embodied this more than Marcion of Sinope, right? Marcion of Sinope. He lived in 85 to 160 AD. Marcion was so offended by the Hebrew scriptures and the image of God in the Old Testament that he rejected the entire Old Testament and much of the New Testament, right? He taught that the God of Israel, the creator, depicted as he was just and he was strict, right? He depicted him as a different, inferior God than the all-forgiving God revealed to us in Jesus, okay? And that's the crazy thing, because that's how people even look at it today, right? We would say all the time, like when you look in the Old Testament scriptures, and you would see how succinct the Most High is, how, you know what I'm saying, direct he is, how on point he is, how descriptive he is, right? Then when we get into the New Testament, all of a sudden he's vague and this doesn't matter and that doesn't matter and things of that nature, right? You're dealing with two different gods, right? The Most High said he doesn't change. Okay, so you have to reconcile the scriptures, right? Marcion's gospel was one of grace without law, right? Love without truth, a complete abandonment of the Torah and the prophets, right? He compiled one of his first canons of scriptures, consisting only of a heavily edited Luke, right, and 10 of Paul's epistles, right? Expunging references to the Hebraic thought and idea, right? Which a lot of folks, when we get talking about from Babylon to the pulpit, right? They do the exact same thing. They teach the exact same thing. They would look at the Old Testament and would read it for inspiration, all right, but not application. Okay. That's how they would get a Good Friday, not knowing that after the feast of Passover was the high holy day of unleavened bread, which was the Sabbath. Then you had another weekly Sabbath, right? There's no such thing as Good Friday, but this is what happens, right? Grace without law, all right? Love without truth, right? And abandoning of the Torah. That was all started by your boy, Marcion of Sinope, right? So he blatantly declared that the gospel had completely superseded the Torah and that the apostles, except for Paul, had allowed their Hebrew notions to corrupt the message of the loving God, right? That's why people say all the time, you know what I'm saying, that God loves me above this. And okay, yeah, that is true. But at the same time, God is just, right? He's just. And he says, you have to love him back. How do you love him back? By obeying him, keeping his law, statutes, and commandments. 1 John chapter 5 and verse 3. Okay. So let's get back to it. Marcion was condemned as a heresy, all right, as a heretic, because his message was a little too early for the church to accept it at the time, right? It's just a little too early. So they called him a heretic, right? And yeah, so we had to deal with church fathers like Tertullian. They wrote entire treaties against it. You know what I'm saying? But Marcion's influence, it forced the church to define what it believed, right? Before they never had to do that. So when these dudes came in with these different opinions, Marcion of Sinope, you know what I'm saying? People had for the first time to be like, okay, well, what do we believe, right? Do we believe it the way that Marcion presented it? All right. So it is what it is. Tragically, mainstream Christianity ultimately kept some of Marcion's mindset, viewing the Old Testament as essentially obsolete and the law of Moses as a curse rather than a gift. Right? This is essential. This is the essence of replacement theology or supersessionism. The notion that the church replaced Israel, all right, and thus the old covenant and its laws were discarded and replaced by a new covenant, all right, on entirely different terms. The terms of agreement are different now, right? You don't have to obey the Most High no more. All you have to do is believe in his son, make sure you call him Jesus and things of that nature, you know, and it's all good. Go to church on Sunday, get baptized, and pay your tithes. right? And in some churches, make sure you can speak in tongues because that's the evidence of the Holy Ghost, right? It is what it is. So even those who opposed Marcion often retained a softer version of this era, right? They opposed him, but they still retained a softer version of this era. By the time of Constantine in the 4th century, a strong anti-Judaic attitude had infected Christian leadership, right? They saw Christian faith as something wholly new, all right, divorced from the obsolete religion of the Jews, okay? They said that the Torah was done away with and we don't need anything that those Hebrews are over there doing. We're going to start our own thing. Okay. So for instance, the early church apologist Justin Martyr, right, in 2nd century, he taught that God's covenant with Israel was no longer effective and that the church was the true Israel now. Okay. A common view that the literal people of Israel and their Torah had been cast off by God for their unbelief. And a lot of people, a lot of Christian apologists today will tell you this exact same thing, right? But understand it came from somebody, in fact, who the scriptures was not even given to. Okay. You have people arguing this point. It's crazy. That's why we give you receipts on individuals who actually introduced this teaching. Okay. It is what it is. So this theological stance set the groundwork for major changes in doctrine and practice when the church gained imperial power, right? When the church had the authority to tell the Spain and Portugal that they can go over to the New World, all right, and they can conquer anybody that they thought was, you know what I'm saying, a savage, right? You get to, if they're not a Christian, you get to take their land, you get to rape their women, you get to put them in slavery, right? You get to do all of that, right? That's how powerful the church had became. It is what it is. The Council of Nicaea and the sunlit path of Constantine. In 312 AD, the Roman Emperor Constantine converted, at least outwardly, to Christianity. A year later, he issued the Edict of Milan, legalizing the faith. Constantine's motives were as much political as spiritual. He sought to use Christianity to unify his empire. That's the narrative, right? Now, when we really do a deep dive into Constantine, we understand that Constantine sought to destroy Christianity from the inside out. And he was masterful at it, right? How do you mean? By taking these pagan idolatrous symbols and signs and teachings and deities and just rebranding them with Christian names and identities, right? Just a rebranding. We're not going to celebrate Passover. We're going to create Easter for ourselves. Okay. We're not going to honor the Sabbath day. We're going to say we're going to worship on Sunday, right? Because that's what we used to do. And we'll just fix it to where we'll say it's the Lord's day, right? He rose up on Sunday morning, right? Scriptures don't confirm any of that, but it is what it is. All right. However, he was a lifelong devotee of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. He maintained the title of Pontifex Maximus, the pagan high priest of Rome, right? And even after professing Christianity, he continued to feature the sun god on his imperial coins. All right. It is no surprise then that under Constantine's influence, Christianity took a decisive turn towards sun worship customs, right? It is what it is. We got receipts, Brother Donnan. We just coming with the receipts, for sure, right? So one of the first things Constantine did was enact the Sunday law of 321 AD, declaring on the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest, right? And let all workshops be closed. Okay. This made Sunday, named for the sun, an official day of rest throughout the Roman Empire, blending pagan culture with Christian practices. Okay. For the first time, Christians were required by civil law to stop observing the biblical seventh-day Sabbath and move their worship to Sunday, right? Aligning with the existing pagan Sunday festivities. Understand that. Historical analysis notes that this meant that Christians who had previously observed the 7-day Sabbath now had to switch to Sunday. They didn't have a choice. Okay? They didn't have a choice. Additionally, the law reinforced the idea that Christianity was aligned with the Roman culture and authority, since Sunday was already significant for pagan worship. Okay. Indeed, Constantine's law, followed by church councils, effectively changed times and laws, exactly what was prophesied in Daniel 7 and 25. All right. A fulfillment that many see as part of the spirit of the Antichrist. Right. The Council of Laodicea, a few decades later in 364 AD, went so far as to anathematize anyone who still resisted the Sabbath. Right. That meant put them to death. Right. Christians must not Judaize, is what they said. Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day, rather honoring the Lord's day, Sunday. If any be found Judaizers, let them be anathema. That's what was the word that they used, of from Christ, or separated from Christ. Right. They thought they had the power to do that. That was just crazy to me. Right. So such official decrees show how thoroughly the church tried to divorce itself from the Torah observance. Right. The same observance that the apostles kept up. You know what I'm saying? Some 300 years later, you're gonna make changes, right? Hey, the people believed it, people followed it, and the people still teach it to this day, right? So the Council of Nicaea, we'll go back. I know we moved up to 364 at the Council of Laodicea. Laodicea. At the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, the first ecumenical council is famous for defining orthodox beliefs in the Nicene Creed. Okay. But it also made decisions that reveal the replacement theology bias of that era. Okay. One major issue at Nicaea was determining the date of Easter. In early centuries, Christians in Asia, following apostolic traditions, celebrated the death and resurrection of the Messiah in accordance with Passover on the 14th day of Nisan, like the scriptures tells us to, right? These believers, they derided it as quadradenarians. All right. They kept a biblical rhythm tied to Israel's calendar, right? So in other words, these Christians, they were looking at the Hebrews, or, you know what I'm saying, to find out when Passover was so they can start celebrating the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, right? They needed to know when Passover was. So they wanted to follow the Hebraic calendar, right? The Roman church, however, favored celebrating Easter or Ishtar on a Sunday, independent from the Hebrews' Passover date, right? They wanted to separate. So at Nicaea, it was decided that Easter would never coincide with Passover, right? They were dead set against it, but would rather be held on the Sunday after the first full moon of spring, a calculation borrowed from the pagan lunar festivals rather than the Torah, right? That's how you get the date of Easter every year, okay? It follows, all right, what they call the sun equinox, first Sunday after the spring equinox. Right? That's when they mark their day of Easter, right? But how do we mark it? Okay, the 14th day, all right? The 14th day after Nisan, right? As the Most High had, you know what I'm saying, commanded us. It is. So, after the council, all right, Emperor Constantine issued a letter to all churches urging the acceptance of the Nicene decision. His words are chilling in their over anti-Jewish tone. All right, he says, let us have nothing in common with the detestable mass of Jews, right? For we have received from our Savior a different way, right? Who is their Savior? If they have turned, you know what I mean, into sun worshipers, who is their Savior, right? You can make your mouth say Christ and this, that, and third, but it's about your practice though, right? It's about you practicing. That's why Christ says, I'm going to say, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Right? It's not about what you say. It is what it is. So he chastised those who might still want to keep the Passover according to the Hebrew custom. All right. Or according to the scriptures, calling it truly most absurd to behold these people. Right? Boasting that without their instruction, we could not keep this feast. right? But it wasn't their instruction. It was the scriptures, right? So these early folk who, who the scriptures was never given to, right? That's why we started off with Psalms 147, verse 19 and 20. Most High did not give his word to any nation, right? Especially not Rome, okay? But these people decided, hey, we don't want to have anything to do with those detestable mass of Jews, for we have received from our Savior a different way, right? And that's how you got to Christianity that you got today. That's why you go to church on Sunday today. That's why you celebrate Easter, all right? And then you go egg hunting. Then you got the chocolate rabbits. You don't know what one thing has to do with the other, right? And we just showed you. We just dropped receipt after receipt. Okay. So the message was clear. The Christian church must separate itself completely from the Hebrew people and their practices. Thus, replacement theology was enforced by imperial decree. Right. The different way Constantine spoke of was essentially a path that mixed Christian belief with pagan forms, while pointedly rejecting the Bible or the biblical calendar and the commandments, dismissing them and just calling those Jewish, right? It was no longer the word of Elohim, all right? It was no longer the Most High's calendar. Those things were called, hey, let's get rid of that because that's Jewish practice, okay? Our Messiah gave us something else, okay? So from that point on, celebrating the Messiah's resurrection became a wholly new festival called Easter, detached from Passover and laden with non-biblical customs, sunrise worship, eggs, chocolate bunnies, things of that nature, right? Lent, right? And Christians who dared to calculate the date by the Torah were excommunicated. If you dare try to use that Bible to find out when to celebrate Easter, you were excommunicated. That's powerful. That's having some authority right there. A lot of people did it out of fear, right? You even have movies where you have like, who was it? King Louis the Eighth, you know what I'm saying, was afraid of being excommunicated by the Pope, right? Things of that nature. The boys was powerful. Okay. It's important to realize that these changes, Sunday's sanctity and Easter in place of Passover, were not commanded anywhere in the scriptures. They were introduced through church councils and edicts, right? Showing how man-made traditions supplanted the commandments of Elohim, right? Yahawah, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus, he had warned us of this attitude when he said, you set aside the commandments of Elohim, all right, in order to hold on to your traditions, okay? In Mark chapter 7 and verse 8. You discard the commandments of Elohim, all right, for the sake of your traditions. People still do that to this day, right? The 4th century, the church was openly doing that, all right? Pagan sun worship was integrated into Christian practice to the extent that later the church in Rome unashamedly claimed responsibility for the switch, right? They said the Catholic Church must be true because we were powerful enough to change the Sabbath from, what God said to the Sunday, right? It is what it is. They boasted that Sunday observance is a mark of its authority, right? Believe that the Romans and the popes, that the Catholics have authority because they were so powerful that they could change the Sabbath from the 7th day to the first day of the week, Sunday, right? So since Protestants who keep Sunday instead of the Sabbath, they're implicitly submitting to a Catholic decree, not a biblical command, right? So while y'all giving props to Martin Luther for challenging the Catholic Church, right? He still kept y'all in that pagan sun worship too, right? But this is what we were talking about earlier, right? When we were talking about St. Peter's Square in the Vatican, right? Look at that obelisk. Look at that sundial, right? Look at that. The obelisk standing at the center of the plaza, right? And the sign of the pavement forming an 8-rayed sun wheel around it. Okay. These are symbols directly linked to pagan sun worship. The obelisk was a solar system or solar symbol of Egypt, right? once topped with a golden orb representing the sun. And the wheel itself is a symbol of the sun god Ishtar. Our sun goddess Ishtar. Right? The Vatican relocated this obelisk from a pagan temple and placed it at its center. Right? Placed it at the heart of the Catholic Church's headquarters, embedding the pagan monument under the guise of Christian decor. Such imagery fulfills the deception of Mystery Babylon, right? Decked with gold and precious stones, yet full of abominations. Okay? That's what Revelation 17:4 is talking about. You don't recognize it. You're participating in Babylonian religious customs, right? Most High told you to come out from amongst them. It is a physical manifestation of how deeply Babylonian sun worship penetrated the church. So you got the medieval theology and the entrenchment. What time is that? Oh, we got 3 minutes left. I'm gonna run through 2 more and we're gonna get out of here. Right? No, if I start this point, I'm gonna have to finish it. So let's just go. The medieval theology and the entrenchment of supersessionism. Right? Oh, let me see. If y'all getting anything out of this Bible study? Hopefully somebody's getting something out of this one. I was trying to see how long this is going to take me because I got like 5 or 6 slides on this one. Yeah, I think we're gonna stop right here. Let's stop right here. And matter of fact, I'm a bookmark where I'm at. All right, slide 32. We're gonna pick this up next Shabbat. All right, we're gonna make a part 2 of this one right here. Hopefully, y'all got something out of this. If there was something that maybe you didn't know, you know what I'm saying? Receipts that were dropped that you weren't aware of, you know. Hopefully, you know what I'm saying, we was able to shed some light on how, you know what I'm saying, we came from Babylon to how the message of Christianity came from Babylon, and now it's being preached in the pulpits. Right, same message. Okay, this is why we go over Romans chapter 6. In verse 16 a lot, right? Because you are the servant of the one you obey. It doesn't matter what you say with your mouth. Okay? It is what it is. Matter of fact, since we're about to close out, let me see if I can get the good brother Chick to come in and give us a you know what I'm saying, give us some wisdom if you don't mind. All right. Appreciate it. Yep. To the Most High be the glory. It's time that we pull out these receipts and, you know what I'm saying, and find out where everything started from, right? Who did it? And what does the Most High have to say? Like, even when we deal with the intention of Constantine, right, to go away from the scriptures, right? That's powerful in and of itself, right? All right, brother Chick, I'm gonna mute my mic and I'm gonna bring you right in. Shabbat shalom, Mark.
Shabbat shalom, bro. Great lesson. Definitely getting something out of it. I know you asked that earlier. We are. Hope you can hear me well. I don't have a lot to add. You're hitting everything on the nail. I'll just back you up on some of the sources you called out. We talked about it before. Josephus, Alexander Hislop, and the 2 Babylons. There's so much information that's backing up what this brother is saying, and I will, like you said, give you those receipts, giving that backing you need to understand where this came from, and I'm not big on saying let's get receipts so we can, sun people. I'm saying so you can defend yourself, because it's attack on people and truth and our belief system. We're trying to spread it correctly, and any support you can have is beneficial. I also throw a third one in there that I read. It's called Fossilized Customs. My dad hit me 2 years ago. That's a good one as well. Just really, I think it's by Lou White, but it just really breaks down where all this came from. Because once we understand where it came from, we can get the whys to it. I think the whys to the lie is always important because it leads us back to the truth of who we are. Lastly, I'll just say, encourage people this time of year. We talked about this earlier in the year, missing some of the holy days. This is an important time. We got the feast days, Day of Atonement coming up, the Feast of Tabernacles, Feast of Trumpets for us that's passed, but it's like a really good time of year, and I would encourage people to tap in to understand those days and stay focused, because if we notice, and I'm not going to say too much because I know how YouTube can be, there's certain things that they do during this time, during this month. You know, we can look back in recent history. There's things they do in this month, and I believe they do it for a reason. So let's stay prayed up and close to the Most High and see if we can't tap into these holy days so he can show us the truth and keep us protected. I just wanted to put that out there because I've been thinking about it. But other than that, bro, I'm looking forward to part 2. Keep doing what you're doing.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? And then matter of fact, put that book in the comments if you don't mind. You know what I mean? So we can kind of try to do some research on that. You know what I'm saying? I forgot the name that you said already, but I said what back? Fossilized customs. Yeah, put that in the comments, brother Chick. We appreciate that. Yep. And yeah, so you know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna overtalk it. There's a lot more. Listen, listen how I'm talking. There's a lot more receipts, you know what I mean, that we're gonna go through. And we're gonna actually, you know what I'm saying, because we're back in Constantine's time. Let's just say we ended there, and then we're gonna fast forward up, you know what I'm saying, and bring it all the way, you know what I'm saying, to the top. We're gonna bring it all the way to present day. All right. Fossilized Customs by Lou White. All right. So make sure y'all check that out. You know what I mean? Look that up. Give that a good read. You know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying? Arm yourself with knowledge, right? You have to understand the truth, and we have to drop receipts on the liars. All right. And when they introduce the lies, so we can get back in step and in right and righteousness with the Most High. All right. So I'm not going to overtalk it. Hopefully y'all got something out of today's Bible study. Shabbat shalom. Shalom. Well, what's going on with my speech at the end? Shabbat shalom. All right, to everybody that watched, anybody that might watch it later. Brother Chick, Shabbat shalom to you. Appreciate that wisdom. Brother Emmanuel Bronson, Brother Donan was with us today. My Aqua Quam 12, Shabbat shalom. Sister Alice Bronson, and thanks for the share. Sister Teresa, thank you for sharing the video as well. My sisters Yasatari De La Paz and my sister Yakahana, Shabbat Shalom to y'all as well. Brother Brian Woods, Brother Eugene, Shabbat Shalom. Sister Champel, Shabbat Shalom. Slack. All right. Hopefully we got everything and everyone. Shabbat Shalom. My sister Maggie in the building. My sister Jessie. Shabbat Shalom to y'all as well. All right. So the Most High willing, we'll be back with another Shabbat, a part 2 to today's Bible study. You know what I'm saying? So stay tuned next week at noon. You know what I mean? Shabbat Shalom. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Shabbat.
My eyes on the prize, no lies for the youth. You gotta love them enough to tell them the truth. The reason why they killing and they dying in these streets. They don't know who they is. They don't know who they is, so preachers in pulpit, lying through their teeth. I can never hate them, but we do got beef. The reason why they lawless and they hate to hear the truth. They don't know who they is. They don't know who they is. Yahawah, we love you. Yahawah, we love you, we thank, we praise your comely name. This vessel is all yours. Take it over, have your way.